So, Vitae Discipuli, let's get started on our Roman history. So we're going to be pulling our history today from Livy. All right, so there is a document called Ob Urbe Condita. So let's break that down. Ob, it's an ablative preposition. It's a separative preposition, and it's a point of view from which. So in this case, it's kind of an abstract point of view. So you're looking back from, or these are books from a certain thing or a certain time. Urbe, that's a noun. It comes from urbs, urbis. So that usually means either the city, like a city, or it's referring to the city of Rome. It's a third declension noun, and it is feminine. So this one right here, it's in the ablative, and it's going to be governed by the preposition ob. So ob urbe. And the last part is condita. This is a perfect passive participle, which also acts as an adjective. So it comes from conditus, condita, conditum, which is having been founded. And it is working here to modify urbe. So these, all three of these right here, it's a little ablative preposition. They are all working together. Okay, so what that means is from the founding of the city of Rome. So Ob Urbe Condita was written by Titus Livius, which we just kind of refer to as Livy when we're talking about him. So he wrote, the Ob Urbe Condita is comprised of 142 books, and they were commissioned by Emperor Augustus. So this is right at the beginning of the empire. Livy was alive for the Republic and that transition into an empire. So it took about 40 years to write the AUC Ob Urbe Condita. So it covers the history of Rome from just after the Trojan War, which goes into the Aeneid, all the way up to the death of Drusus. So this is after Emperor Augustus, and Drusus was the brother of Emperor Tiberius, who was another Julio Claudio emperor. So only about 35 books have survived from the time they were written for various reasons. They're made out of perishable materials, and while they were copied extensively, some things just don't make it fully intact to the modern day. So we know about the existence of the content of the other books because they were quoted or referenced or summarized by other Roman authors and other authors who were contemporary and also who were after Livy. So fragments of these missing books have been found as recently as the 80s. So when we talk about time, the Romans measured years from the founding of Rome, from their kind of myth, legend, folklore founding myth. So Ob Urbe Condita is kind of like, so this many years from the founding of Rome. And the founding of Rome was, according to their legend, April 21st, 753 BCE. Now they didn't use the 753 BCE part. That's part that modern scholars have tacked on. But the date, April 21st, is what they considered to be their founding date. And this date is the date in which Romulus, the founder of Rome, killed his brother Remus and then named the new city after himself. So why are we reading and translating Livy right now? So Livy was one of the historians who wrote about the Roman monarchy, and that is the subject that we are working our way into. And we need to look at text that is relevant to the kind of cultural and historical subject that we are studying. So this right here is it's a simplified text from the Praefatio, from the very beginning of Ob Urbe Condita. So we are going to work through this and translate it, and we're going to do this first sentence together. And this is, like I said, simplified text from Praefatio of Urbe Condita. So book one, the Praefatio. What does it mean? Praefatio just means the preface. Okay, so we're going to have our Latin over here on this side. This is our Latin sentence that we're going to work through together. Meios labor est magnus, sed multum gaudium in studio, antiquorum invenio quod possum meus oculos de presentia vertere. Now, how are we going to translate it? So what we're going to do first is we're going to start by dividing the sentences into smaller, more manageable sections. Divide and conquer. So for this sentence, we're going to start by looking for the verbs or for conjunctions. Because if we went through and just spliced it up after the verbs, we would be interrupting a couple of phrases, or just one phrase here that needs to stick together. So we're going to go with both verbs and conjunctions and kind of split the difference between them. So this first division we're going to do right after Magnus here. So the first section is going to be Meius labor est Magnus. The second division we're going to do is right here after invenio, after that verb. So the second section is going to be sed multum gaudium in studio antiquorum invenio. And then that last section right there is going to be quod possum meos oculos de presentia vertere. So we're going to put the last one right there at the end where the sentence or where the period was. Sometimes you'll get text that has really helpful punctuation, and that is nice and that is helpful. But if you don't have any kind of punctuation guide or anything, looking for verbs and placing a division after a verb is a good way to go. Looking for things like prepositions and starting with the preposition and using that as its own like little section is good. You can also look for things like introductions to clauses or phrases. So things like your relative clauses will help you find different sections to break down. All right, so this first section, what do we start with? We need to look for things like nouns and or modifiers in the nominative. So the first things that we have are Meius, labor, and Magnus. All three of these are the nominative form. Okay, so which of these are nominative nouns and which of these are things like, adjectives, other modifiers? Which of these is our subject? So the noun in this little section right here is labor, laboris. It's a third declension noun. This is the nominative form. It's masculine, it's singular, and so it translates to something like effort, work, labor, something you are putting together. It's not quite like an opus, but it's something that you are, because that's like a big collection of works. And yes, you could kind of consider like the AUC like an opus itself, but in this case, we're just thinking of like something like putting all my effort into something, all my work into something. Okay, so that is our subject. Labor, labor, work is our subject, and our subject is singular and it's masculine. So what are our other two here? Meius and Magnus. So Meius is a personal possessive pronoun. So it's like an adjective. It's a first, second declension. Meius for the masculine, mea for the feminine, meum for the neuter, right? So this is a modifier. It's a pronoun that also works as an adjective. So it's modifying labor here. It's saying my labor. Okay, so my labor. It's a singular here, like I said. Okay, so my labor, what? What's the other word here? Magnus. So Magnus is another adjective. It's a modifier as well. It's a first, second declension as well. And it's great, like great, large, important, massive, things like that. So it again is modifying labor. So my labor and great. These are all the things that are in the nominative. So we've got our nouns in the nominative. We've got everything else in the nominative. We only have one other word in this section. So what is it? Turns out it's a verb. So yay. So let's go on to the verbs in this section. So est, we are familiar with est. We've done sum esse. Est is the third person singular present active indicative form of sum esse. So third person, he, she, it, singular. That is. So the subject of the verb here is going to be labor because it's a third person. It needs that, that noun in the nominative to be its subject. So this section here will translate to my labor is great. My labor is massive. My labor is huge. I'm working really hard on something is the meaning of this. This little section of the sentence is also what's called a predicate nominatives, where you have something in the nominative and you have a verb of like a state of being, like sum esse, I am to be, or something like possum posse, which is to be able to. So you have a verb, a state of being verb with a noun in the nominative and another either noun or adjective or something also in the nominative, where the verb here is drawing an equivalence between the two. This is this. X is Y. These are the same. That's what a predicate nominative is. So our first little section here, pretty quick and easy. Meios labor Magnus. My labor is great. Excellent. Let's move on to the next section. Okay, so the next section is said multum gaudium in studio antiquorum invenio. So how do we translate this part? Let's look for something in the nominative. Well, we don't have anything in the nominative here. So we'll move on to identifying the verbs. And the only verb that we have in this section is invenio. Invenio is from invenio invenere, which is a fourth conjugation. This is the first person singular present active form, present active indicative form. It's the first principal part. The subject is contained within this verb because it is a first person singular form. I am the subject. I find. Okay, so that's what we have first and foremost is our verb I find for this section. Okay, so since we have a verb, which is transitive, so transitive verb needs to have a direct object in order to complete the sentence, to complete the clause or the sentence. An intransitive verb is a verb that can stand on its own, that doesn't need to have a direct object, but can take a direct object. An example would be I jump. That's an intransitive verb. Jump there is an intransitive verb. It can take an object. I jump the fence, jump over the fence. Transitive verb would be something like find. I find. That's not a complete sentence. We need to find something else for you to find in that sentence. I need to find something. So in this sentence, we need to look for a direct object, something for invenio to take, a direct object for this verb to take. So we need something in the accusative. So let's search the sentence for something in the accusative. Multum gaudium, these two words are in accusative forms. So which of these two are nouns, or which is the noun? Gaudium here, this is the noun. It's from gaudium gaudii. It's a noun. It's a second declension noun. This is the accusative form. It's neuter and singular, and it means joy. Okay, so I find joy. What's the other word doing here? Multum. So it's not a noun because we already found the noun. This is an adjective. It's a first, second declension adjective. This is the accusative form as well. So it's from multus, multa, multum. And this is modifying gaudium. So we have gaudium, which is joy, multum, much joy. So if we stick these two together, I find much joy. This is the kernel of this section of the sentence. So the kernel is the main point, idea, message of the sentence or section that you're reading. So everything else is just kind of addressing at this point. The main point is I, Livy, speaking here, I find joy. Okay, so now we need to find what Livy finds much joy in. So where would we go next? Well, in this short little section right here, we have a preposition in followed by a noun in the ablative. So using this in plus an ablative, we know that we have an ablative of place where. In plus an accusative, which tell us like motion towards something or into something. An ablative tells us like place where. So we know we are moving, we're not moving, we're within something, okay? So what is that? In studio, which is another noun, from studio, studii. It's a noun. It's a second declension noun. This is the ablative form. It's a neuter. It's singular. And it means like the study, the pursuit, or like devotion. So far we have, I find, speaking as Livy, I find much joy in study, in the pursuit, in the devotion. Great. I find much joy in study, in within the study. Study of what? Now we need to look for something that would tell us what kind of study. We need a case that will give us some sort of description. So we have a case for that. Genitive is a great case for description. So we need something that describes what kind of study he finds great joy in or much joy in. And what we have here is antiquorum. This is a noun. It's masculine. It's plural. This is a genitive form. It's a second declension. And it means of the ancients. So like it's like of the ancient men, of the ancestors, of the ancients. So far we have invenio, I find multum gaudium, much joy, in studio, in the study, antiquorum, of the ancients. So what's left in this little section right here that we haven't covered? Said. Said is a conjunction meaning but, however, yet. So if we take this to all these together here, our literal translation will be, but great joy in the study of the ancients I find. And if we had a free translation that's more like one that makes sense in the language that you speak, you would have, but I find great joy in the study of the ancients. All right, so that's that section. In this section, what we just covered, we just have basically, we have a transitive verb that takes a direct object, which is pretty usual. We have an ablative, a place where, and that's about it. Nothing really that special for grammatical constructions. So our next section here, quod possum meos oculos de presentia vertere. What do we need to do first? We're going to look for our nominative. Doesn't look like we have anything in the nominative. So we're going to skip the nominative and go to the verbs. What verbs do we have? We have possum and vertere. Possum, that is from possum posse. It's an irregular verb. This is the first person singular present active indicative form. It's the first principal part. So the subject is contained within the verb again, I, because it's a first person singular form. I am able. Great. So that's our first verb there. We've got another verb in this sentence or in this section here, and it is vertere, to turn. This is from verto, vertere, which is a third conjugation. And this form is the present active infinitive. So what we have here with possum plus vertere is a construction called a complementary infinitive. So the infinitive completes the action or meaning of the conjugated verb. Here we have the infinitive vertere completing the action or meaning of the conjugated verb, which is possum. So it comes together to translate to I am able, so possum vertere, I am able to turn. And now this construction right here can take a direct object. So that's where we're going to go next. We're going to look for things that can be our direct objects. Which nouns here could be direct objects? We need to look for something in the accusative. So we have Meios, oculos here. Those two are in the accusative form. Now, between Meios and oculos, which of those is the noun? Well, we know it can't be Meios because we already had a form of Meios earlier. So oculus must be our noun here. We have oculos, which is from oculus, oculi. This is a noun. It's a second declension, a masculine. This form we have right here, oculos, that's a plural form. And this means eyes. Now we're familiar with Meios from earlier. It's from Meios, mea, meum again. We saw that at the very beginning, the first section, Meios labor. So this again is from Meios, mea, meum. It's a personal possessive pronoun, which is an adjective for second declension. This is a first person, so my, and this is the accusative form. So together, these are my eyes. And now when we put it together to find the kernel, the main point, idea, message of this section, we put it together with the complementary infinitive, and we have possum meos oculos vertere, I am able to turn my eyes. So where is Livy turning his eyes? So we need something here to show the relationship between Livy's eyes and another object. So we need to look for a preposition within this little section here. Quod possum meos oculos de presentia vertere. Where is the preposition? De. De right here is a preposition. It's an ablative preposition. It's used for separative ablative use. And it means like about or of, with regard to, concerning, and it precedes a noun in the ablative in this sentence. Ablative presentia right here, present time. So this is a noun from presentia, presentiae. It's a first declension. This is the ablative form. It's feminine and it's singular. And like I said, it means the present time or the present. So these taken together, de and presentia mean like with regard to the present, concerning the present, about the present. So we've gotten possum meos oculos de presentia vertere. I am able to turn my eyes with regard to the present or to the present, about the present, but there's one more section, or there's one more word in the section that we haven't looked at, that we haven't addressed, and that word is quad. Okay, so we've only seen quad thus far used as a relative pronoun. Here it's working as something different. It's not working as a relative pronoun here. Here, its grammatical function is really similar to a conjunction because it is linking clauses together. So the way it's being used here is called a connecting relative because it's a relative pronoun, but it's connecting two clauses together. So you know that it's a connecting relative rather than a relative pronoun, introducing a relative clause, because a relative pronoun would have an antecedent. And generally, a connecting relative will be that quad right there. It'll be used in the neuter singular. Not that there aren't things that are in the sentence that are neuter, but it doesn't make any sense for those to be the antecedent because it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't explain those things any further. Okay, and they would be in simplified Latin like this. It would be closer together, so it'd be easier to suss out. Okay, so this is being used as a connecting relative. It's functioning very similarly to a conjunction. So we're going to translate it as because. So putting this, all the parts of this section together, because I am able, my eyes with regard to the present to turn. So that's your literal translation, one-to-one direct. Your free translation where you make it sound better or like actually, I don't know, coherent in the language you're translating it into, because I am able to turn my eyes to the present. That's this last section here. So we need to now put all three of these sections together. The first section, Meus labor est magnus, my labor is great, sed multum gaudium in studio antiquorum invenio, but I find much joy in the study of the ancients. Quad possum meus oculos de presentia vertere, because I am able to turn my eyes to the present. Okay, so that is the first sentence. Your job is going to be to move on in the text on your own and try using the method or using my little guide here as your guide to try and work through the next part. I'm going to provide you, of course, with a vocabulary list so you're not totally on your own. There's also Whitaker's Words, which is an excellent resource for Latin dictionaries. All right. Good luck, and I will talk to you soon.